Hello and welcome again to Penthesilea On Air podcast. Today, with our new format, our bonus episodes. As time is always too short when I'm talking to our experts, and there were particularly many questions by our community for Dr. Molly Gebrian, violist, neuroscientist, and author of Learn Faster, Perform Better, a musician's guide to the neuroscience of practicing, we decided to do something new and to add an additional bunch of insightful questions to another episode. So here it is. Enjoy. A very warm welcome to all those classical musicians out there who want to grow and expand a creative lifestyle both on and off stage. My name is Karin Bonelli. I'm flutist at the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra, a passionate explorer and seeker in musical and personal growth, and founder of Penthesilea Academy, the most innovative masterclass designed for audition preparation. This podcast is for you if you're searching for new ideas to elevate the productivity of your musical practice and your level of focus and expression on stage. But that's not all. In each episode, you will find bits and pieces to integrate into your everyday life, as well as new perspectives and insights by our experienced and passionate team and guests. Music is not a job. It is a way of living. My name is Karin Bonelli, and this is Penthesilea On Air. So thank you for still staying with us, for being back for our bonus material with Dr. Molly Gebrian. Molly, we have some questions from our community. The first one is, you say in the opening chapter of your book, good practice focuses on weaknesses, not strengths. But isn't it also necessary to also enjoy our strengths and build confidence in them through that in our practice room?
Yes, I love that question because it's absolutely spot on. That we need to have confidence in our strengths, that we need to be able to trust ourselves on stage. And the reason I wrote that statement in my book is because I think it's very easy for people to always fall back on their strengths in the practice room and kind of ignore their weaknesses. It's like, well, do I really have to deal with this? Like, you're going to feel better if you do. And especially younger students tend to like play through what they could already play well and sort of avoid the hard things. And so I think that it's absolutely true that we need to be aware of our strengths. We need to be able to rely on our strengths, and we need to have that sort of trust and intuition in ourselves, especially on stage, that like, no, I can do this. I know how to do this. This is something that I am good at. But I think in terms of getting better and pushing yourself to the next level of playing, if you're ignoring your weaknesses, they're always going to be holding you back. And your job most of the time, I think, in the practice room is to identify those weaknesses, not with judgment, right? Not with saying, oh, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? But with curiosity, like, oh, that's so interesting. Like, that's really hard for me, or this is really tripping me up. Why is that? And sort of picking it apart. And I think the greatest thing you can do in the practice room is make your weaknesses your strengths, right? And that you used to have this thing that was really hard for you that didn't work. And you really kind of got in there and took it apart and weren't afraid of it. And now you come out the other side and it's one of your really great strengths that you can get up on stage and be like, yeah, like I can do this. Look at me.
Yeah, I love it that you also said in the main interview at some point, instead of beating yourself up, just get curious. I think that this is an amazing way of reframing this voice of negativity in our minds. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think it's so important because especially as classical musicians, I think we're trained to beat ourselves up, right? And then that beating up voice comes with us on stage. And that's not helpful to have. I mean, can you imagine like on stage having an actual person standing next to you yelling at you like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you do this? Like you would not play well. But if there was an actual person standing on stage with you, cheering you on and being like, you got this. Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, you can do this. Like if that person was standing next to you on stage, like it would give you so much confidence. You'd play so much better. So you need to be that person for yourself on stage, not that horrible person standing next to you trying to rip yourself down.
Yeah, I love that. I call them the inner cheerleaders, and I take them with me on stage.
Yes, exactly. So important.
Yeah. So the second question we got is, do you advise your students to also practice when they're extremely very tired? How do we avoid building the wrong pathways in our brain when we're practicing in such a non-ideal state?
Yes. So in short, no. If you're really tired, go to sleep. That's my advice on that. Because if you're not focused, you're not going to play well and you're just going to reinforce things. But also, if you're really tired, you need sleep. And we talked in the main interview about the importance of sleep. Our brains do so much stuff when we're sleeping. And what I say to students all the time, if the decision is ever between should I practice or should I sleep, the answer is always you should sleep. There's never an exception to that. And so if you're really tired, go to sleep. You're going to be served much better by doing that than practicing.
So we have another question on sleep, Molly. One of our students asked, before an audition, I'm never able to sleep. But surprisingly, I feel like I play better on those days because I'm not so much able to over-control things. Is this something that could be explained neurologically?
Yeah, I love that question. And I had an experience once taking a very important audition and I was very sick, like very, very sick. I thought I was going to like pass out on stage and I played so well. Like it was like one of the best auditions I've ever taken because I didn't have the energy to get nervous. I didn't have the energy to worry about things. I just was just like, get me out of here, like do this audition and then like leave. And so neurologically, I would say what's going on, especially when someone's really tired, is that the prefrontal cortex, which is what we use to sort of over control things and self-monitor and just really pay attention to lots and lots of details. The prefrontal cortex takes a lot of energy in the brain and is often one of the first things to sort of go offline or not work quite as well when we get tired. I think people can relate to this if like late at night when you're really tired, people tend to make like bad decisions in terms of like, like eating a bunch of stuff maybe they shouldn't eat or like buying things online that they shouldn't, like those sort of like bad decisions that the next day you're like, what was I thinking? It's because the prefrontal cortex and they're called executive function skills, these kind of higher level thinking skills, they tend to go offline when we are really tired because they just take a lot of energy from the brain. And those skills are really important in the practice room to sort of analyze what's going on. But in performance, you don't want that kind of hyper over control there for you because it's going to get in your way. And you do want to be able to kind of just play and trust yourself without this constant over control and over monitoring. And if you're really tired, it's really hard to do that over control and over monitoring because the prefrontal cortex is like, I'm exhausted. I'm out. I'm not doing this. And so I'm not surprised that this person experiences that because the prefrontal cortex is probably just too tired to do its job. And in this case, it's a good thing that it's not doing its job. And this person's able to just play without getting in their own way.
Yeah. And I also found out for myself that when I'm really sick or I'm really tired, it's just that my expectations are not so high.
That's
and I
true
don't put so much pressure on myself. I don't have the expectation of being perfect. I've just have the expectation of surviving.
Exactly. That's a great point too. Yeah, I gave a recital once where everything that could have possibly gone wrong in the 24 hours before the performance went wrong, including my pianist getting stuck overseas and having to find a new pianist. Like everything that could have gone wrong. It was such a great recital because I was just like, I just need to get through this thing. Like it's amazing that I'm even standing here in front of you. And so I played great because I really didn't care if it was good or not. I just had to get through it.
Yeah. So third question. I think this is also very relevant. In my probational period, I had a really bad experience with a particular excerpt of a piece. Since then, there seems to be some trauma ingrained with it. Every time I come to this place, my heart rate goes up and I get so nervous that I can't play it as good as in the practice room. Is there something neuroscience can teach me to overwrite this experience in my brain?
Yeah, great question. I think we've all had experiences like that. You play something in a performance or audition situation, it goes really badly, and then you're really, really scared of it. And so, I mean, without knowing like what the traumatic experience was, I mean, if it was really traumatic, like it might be worth talking to a therapist about it, right? And treating that like outside the performance realm. But in terms of actually like practicing in a different way and rerouting your brain, I think that it can be really helpful in those situations. One, to just put it down for a long time, to use this idea of breaks and time. That can be in and of itself beneficial. But also to approach it in a variety of different ways that are very different than how you'd actually want to play it in real life. I talk about this in my book. It's under the umbrella of what's known as variable practice. And so changing this section of the excerpt to make it very different as a way of finding fun in it. So play it in a variety of different emotions or characters in a way that you'd never actually perform it. Change the rhythm in a way that makes it sound like it's in a different style. Transpose it to all the keys. That's something because classical musicians, we never do, but jazz musicians do it a lot. Try to play it as if you are a different musician, like try to emulate some other player. In my book, there's like this huge list of variable practice methods. But doing that, I find can, one, make it fun, but break people out of their normal way of playing it and give you a different perspective on this piece or this section of a piece. It can break you out of how you've always thought about it and give you a completely new perspective on it, even if you wouldn't actually play it that way in real life. Like you look at it differently. And then in terms of being able to play it and it not falling apart on you, doing interleaved performance testing, kind of like we were talking about in the main part of the interview, that can you just pick up and play that out of nowhere when you're not prepared to. Doing something like adversity training, which is making things really difficult for yourself in the way that it might be in a performance. So for me as a string player, I always worry about my hands getting really sweaty. And if I get really nervous, my hands get really sweaty and I can't hold on to my bow very well. And it's hard to shift. And it feels like you're just like sliding all over the instrument. So I will put lotion on my hands and not rub it in, or wash my hands and not dry them. So they're all wet and slippery and horrible. And then I will make myself play to prove to myself that, no, I can do this. Right. And so anything that you can do to sort of recreate the terrible performance situation. So for this person, they say their heart starts to race, run up and down the stairs a whole bunch of times, get your heart racing, and then go play it and see if you can. And then what we were talking about before with this sort of graded sort of exposure therapy of like, okay, can you play this excerpt for an audio recording device? And how do you feel? Do you feel okay? Play it for video, then play it for a person that feels really safe, and just like very gradually increase your tolerance for being able to deal with that. The other thing I think is important, I felt for a long time, because my heart starts to race when I'm performing too. I felt for a long time that the only way that I would be able to play well is if I was totally calm. And if I get this bodily activation, I can't play well. And I've come to realize that that's actually not true. Like I can still play well. It may feel uncomfortable, but it was actually my fear of feeling uncomfortable. And if I started getting that body activation, being like, oh no, I can't play now, and realizing like, no, actually, I can still play. It's uncomfortable, but I can still play. That kind of mindset shift can also be really powerful, I think, in these kinds of situations. So just because you get activated, that doesn't automatically mean that you can't play it. And so putting yourself, once you've done this like audio recording, video recording, like safe people, putting yourself in a situation where you do get activated so you can prove to yourself, actually, no, you can still play. It may not be quite as clean as you want, but you can still play. And that will sort of calm you down for feeling like it's going to be this big disaster.
Yeah, and I love that you said it's proving to yourself that you can do it and not for anybody else.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Shifting the perspective.
Yeah.
Good. We have 2 more questions.
Great.
I had a teacher who made me repeat one part again and again, hundreds of times, even during lessons, until it finally stuck the way he wanted it to sound. I'm not sure that this was the most helpful practice advice I received, but somehow it worked. Is this a good practice strategy? And how many times do we have to repeat a passage until it is embodied in our brains?
Yes. So I would say, no, that's not the best practice strategy. It works. Obviously it does, because, we've all had this experience. It does work, but it's the very, very long, slow road to getting there. What will work a lot better of ingraining things quickly, and so they stick with you, is what we were talking about in the main part, is taking breaks and interleaving. Rather than doing something over and over and over and over and over and over and over, kind of ad nauseum, that you do it a few times and then take a break and then come back to it later. Or you do something a few times, you work on other stuff, you come back and you see how it is. Things will stick with you much more effectively if you build in this breaks and this idea of interleaving, rather than like endless repetitions on top of each other. So that would be my prescription for that.
Yeah, very good. Then the last one, when we have a completely new piece, like a contemporary music, what is the best way to go about learning it? Should we start by first reading the whole thing? Should we dive right into sections or the details? And how can we avoid to learn mistakes from the very beginning?
Yeah, great question. So I play a lot of contemporary music, and I actually feel like learning contemporary music is exactly the same process as learning anything else, but it's because I learn things kind of in a different way than I think a lot of people do. So my step is always going through the whole thing, not to play it through, but to figure out what I have to do. So for like a standard piece of music, like something like by Brahms, let's say, I need to go through and figure out my fingerings and bowings and just write those all in. So I'm not playing it through. I'm playing a little bit, trying things out, writing in fingerings and bowings. With a contemporary piece, it's often that I have to figure out fingerings and bowings, but it may be I have to like literally figure out how to do some weird extended technique that I've never done before, or I have to decode the notation in some way because it's some strange notation. And so my first step is going through and at least preliminarily figuring out fingerings and bowings and figuring out, how do I do these things? What is the notation telling me? And once I have that basic overview of, okay, here's all the components of this piece, then I do the red, yellow, green thing, actually, like we were talking about in the main part, where I divide the piece into red, yellow, green sections. Again, red sections are emergencies. If I had to play this right now, absolutely not. It would be incredibly embarrassing. Yellow sections need work, but they aren't emergencies. Green sections, obviously I'm going to practice them, but they're not as hard as red or yellow sections. And then I get right to work on my red sections. And often for a contemporary piece, that involves a lot of taking things apart and experimentation, especially if it's weird notation or it's extended techniques that I've never done before, or I've only done a couple of times. So then often I have to experiment a lot to figure out, how do you do this? Like how is this going to work? And breaking things down into manageable little steps. That's like, okay, I can accomplish this step and that step feels clean. Okay, now I'm going to put the next step on top of it. So I work in sections right away. I do a lot of taking apart. I do a lot of experimentation, and then gradually putting it together. I often think that practicing and learning a piece of music is like building a house out of bricks, but first you have to make your bricks. So I make all my bricks and then I put them together a little bit at a time. And the reason it's a house made out of bricks is because like bricks are like individual things, right? And you can't go from like one brick to a whole wall all at once. You have to like put them like a little bit at a time and build it up. And I think sometimes people make big brick columns. Like they'll make one part sound really, really, really good, and the rest of the thing is a disaster. And if you're building a house out of bricks, like that's not going to work really well to make a big brick column. But if everything is kind of coming up piece by piece together, that tends to work more successfully.
Great. Thank you for that advice. Thank you, Molly, for taking this additional time for our bonus material. Thank you for the whole interview, for your insights, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.